Hey, Derek, thanks so much for joining me today and being willing to kind of share your cancer story. Just
No
starting
problem.
out, tell us a little bit about you, what you like to do, family life, anything that you want to share.
Yeah, glad to talk to you today, Josh. My name's Derek Diener. I'm a film producer and a production company owner called Make Films. That's why I wear this hat that says Make. We make meaningful films and impact with filmmaking in the commercial space and in the film space. But that's my day job. I'm still in my office here, and I have a family, married with two kids. 14-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son. I live in Pennsylvania, small town USA, about an hour outside of Philadelphia in Lancaster County, and just love to spend time with my family, make films, and I get to do what I love to do for a living, which is kind of amazing.
And of course, the topic today is cancer and kind of hearing kind of what you've gone through, what your story is. So, with that in mind, let's just start at the very beginning. Take me back to, were there warning signs? What year was it? How did that whole process of actually being diagnosed begin?
Yeah, so 2017, I had blood in my stool out of nowhere. I had maybe irritable bowels, but not really. It wasn't anything. I had no pain. I had nothing like that. I just all of a sudden started getting blood, and I was just trying to figure out what was going on. My sister-in-law is a doctor, and she's like the family doctor, so it's like a group text, like, "Hey, something's going on. Get your daughter to the doctor." Then whatever. She's just really helpful. And when I was going through this for a few weeks, we had a family get together, and I think the biggest thing with colorectal cancer is, people, you can talk about a lot of things, but it's sometimes hard to talk about poop and toilet and things. So I was like, what, I have blood in my soul. I don't know what's going on. This is kind of weird. And she actually said, what, this is, you don't mess around with blood in your stool. I'd recommend just skipping, if you can do it, skip your family doctor, go right to a specialist, because I think you should just get a colonoscopy. So I was able, with our insurance, able to do that. This was like June of 2017, and so went and did that, and I was nervous. It just felt off to me. Like, looking back to it, I was nervous about it. It just didn't feel like anything routine. It felt a little abnormal. It felt bigger than just something. And I don't want to get in people's heads either, because a lot of times it's hemorrhoids or it's things like that. It's less than 1% chance, for me at the time, 31 years old, to have colorectal cancer. So went to the specialist, ended up getting an appointment about 5 weeks later to get a colonoscopy. Got the colonoscopy, and then just really remember that moment when the doctor came to me and said, "Hey, listen, you have stage 3." Well, actually, no, he didn't know I had any staging yet. He just said, you have a tumor in your colon. If there's any consolation, it's probably the best spot for it to be in your colon. It's in your sigmoid colon. We could most likely remove it without getting a bag or anything like that. I didn't know exactly the diagnosis, but basically he did that, and then that night I got a CAT scan that afternoon, and then found out shortly after that it was isolated to my colon, and then I didn't know until went to emergency surgery a week later. Had surgery, removed the colon, removed 9 inches, 8 inches to 9 inches of my colon, removed it, and then didn't know exactly what was next. If I had to do chemo, what's the staging, and then shortly after that, they were able to find that there was some lymph nodes affected, and I do have to have chemo because it was stage 3B. And I elected to get chemo. Everybody has a different story, but I elected to do that. It was really increased my chances of survival and curing the cancer if I did that. So that was in 2017, 2018. I did 12 treatments of FOLFOX, which is for colorectal cancer. Had the surgery first, 12 treatments of FOLFOX, and I'm cured now. 7 years later, still no evidence of disease, and I'm feeling good and healthy.
Well, that's awesome, and that at the end of the day, that's the most important. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking in terms of the first time that you saw blood in your stool to actually getting the colonoscopy. How long of a period are we talking about?
Well, for me, it was around 2 months, and that's relatively quickly. I've met a lot of people along the way the last 7 years who had similar diagnosis, and They sometimes had blood for months or for like a year sometimes, trying to think, is it dietary or what's going on? And so I was just thankful that my sister-in-law was like, just go get it done, go get the colonoscopy right away. And that was, I think, could have saved my life. It could have made me, I could have had stage 4 if I didn't check. So I always tell people, like, when you have any kind of symptoms, listen to your body. Early detection is the biggest fighter against cancer. So
when you had the surgery that you had, and then all those rounds of chemo, what was everyday life like? What were the side effects that you had from surgery? What were the side effects that you had from chemo? And kind of how did you manage to get through what I assume were some pretty low days?
Yeah, it was a hard year. Looking back, my wife was incredible. I said I had 2 kids. My kids were 7 and 4. And they were just kind of a joy to help me when I was going through these. But it really just, in the simplest terms, it felt like I had an extreme flu every other week for almost a year, not quite a year, I think 8 months or something like that. And then right when I felt like I was starting to bounce back, then I had to go for another, round of chemo. And at all chemos, I think the hardest thing about cancer is that all cancers, all chemos, everything they're all so different. I could have stage 3B colorectal cancer, and a friend of mine could have stage 3B colorectal cancer. And we have completely different types of cancers. They grow different rates, they grow different speeds, they need different things. Chemo for me is different than chemo for you, depending if someone else has it, So the C word, both the C words, chemo and cancer, are extremely scary. And cancer is such an emotional journey. It's just as much keeping my physical body in check as it was my mental body in check. Ann Barshinger Cancer Institute, which is part of Penn and LG Lancaster General Health here in Pennsylvania, was amazing. They gave me a nutritionist and people to talk to, and it really was a roller coaster. It was just one moment feeling great, the next not so great, physically and mentally.
And then in terms of the surgery, did you have any complications? What was the recovery like for that?
No, the surgery went very well. It was kind of a wild ride. It was like August 24th, 2017 was when I was diagnosed. And then I think it was September 5th was my surgery. They wanted to do it pretty quickly. With the way that my tumor was located in my colon, they were able to do it pretty quickly and just kind of isolate both sides, take it out, do the test. So I was in the hospital for 3 days, and then it was like 3 weeks of recovery. But I was able to work from home. Owning my own company, I was able to keep working. I have an incredible production team. Everybody stepped up and helped, and we all made it work. We got through it. But it was hard. Surgery was tough, but relatively, I was very thankful that I didn't have any complications through surgery. I had weird side effects of chemo like everybody does, a lot. I still have neuropathy in my hands and my feet. So that's always a reminder when I'm on a cold day or when every time I go to bed, my feet just tingle, my hands just tingle. And it's just always a reminder of like just being here, like blessed to be here.
Yeah.
So
you had mentioned, the actual diagnosis. You're 31 years old.
Yeah.
As men, especially at that age and in the 20s, we tend to not really think long term. We think, I don't want to say invincible, but certainly cancer is not going to jump out and be something that you expect. With your kids so young at the time of that diagnosis, when you got that news, how did you kind of process it? And I'm assuming that things kind of flashed before you of you wanted to be there for graduations and proms and weddings and things like that.
Yeah, no, that was again the emotional. I'm a very optimistic person, but going through cancer just really tests your brain, tests your mind, tests your thinking on what are you going to think about the future. I actually call it the day I became alive when I was diagnosed. I did even a short little documentary, just an 11-minute documentary about the journey. Because I feel like from that point forward, my life changed to like before cancer and after cancer. And my life became a constant blessing of a second chance, of not getting a terminal diagnosis. But in the very beginning, when you don't know, I said that a lot. It's like my life flashed before my eyes. It was I wasn't thinking mortality. I wasn't thinking how long I have to live. It was like, I have a lot of life to live. I just have young kids. I'm building a business. I'm doing all these things. This is not what I'm supposed to be thinking about right now. So that was really hard. But then again, I look back on it and I think I'm thankful that I went through it, because I was thinking about things that I wasn't before, and I got through it, and I learned a lot about myself, about my faith, about my family, and what we're capable of being. Again, I was diagnosed with with a treatable diagnosis, and so many times that's what happens. Unfortunately, cancer affects a lot of us, but so many times they're treatable if you catch it early. So that's a big thing, but the mental side of it is huge.
You had said that, during your treatment, that your wife was incredible, that your kids were there. They were probably at the age of, they probably knew something was going on, but they didn't really understand it fully. Did, was there anything that you discovered hobby-wise, walking, exercise, music, whatever, that made some of those days, when you were going through what you described as extreme flu symptoms, made any of that better? Or was it kind of just like grit and I'm going to get through it and just kind of power through?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of things. Chemo is interesting because then they give you all these meds to help you, get through the chemo, and then all those meds have their own side effects of constipation or any. I mean, there's all these things. Mainly, chemo for me was, fever, sickness, stomach issues, neuropathy, sensitivity. So I found finding things. I actually went through a little bit of time during chemo where I gained a lot of weight, also because of the steroids of the chemo too. But I just was like eating whatever I wanted because I'm like, well, I'm on chemo. It's not really a good mentality to have. But I was like, well, at least I'm going to enjoy some food. Although it wasn't always the most enjoyable because you're, going through all these things. But I worked with my doctors. It was like medical marijuana was becoming a thing. I don't know if I can talk about that here or not, but I went off some of the stomach meds that I was on and switched to some medical marijuana, and that actually changed things a lot for me. I was able to just kind of relax, and also it helped my stomach issues. It was mainly like the third day, so I would take chemo and I would be on a pump for a day, and like the third day after that, when it kind of all came into my body and my system, that day it was like I needed to be on meds or something, and so I started doing medical marijuana, and that tremendously helped. But trying to do things with the family more on those third days, especially like watch movies, or I didn't really want to go anywhere. I definitely didn't want to go anywhere on those days, especially those couple of days like leading up. But anything to distract yourselves, be with family, be with people that you care about, that was all important. I also love to grill. I have a big green egg. I love to make food too. So I try to do a lot of those things and as much as I could.
Now you're speaking my language, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, After you had mentioned a few minutes ago that there's no evidence of disease today. After those rounds of chemo, what did life look like? Were you going back every couple of months for scans? When did that all stop? And then fast forward to today, is there any type of maintenance or looking out for anything, or are you just doing your everyday thing, and if you notice something pops up, then you go get a check?
Yeah. So basically, after surgery and chemo, that was kind of when the mental fight started. Because physically, you do everything you can. You endure chemo, you endure surgery, but then after that, you're like, well, what do I do now? And so I really went on a bit of a health journey. I lost a lot of weight too. I started exercising more. But you get scanned. In the beginning, I was getting scanned. Getting blood work every 6 months, and then getting scanned once a year, and then that was for the first 5 years. And then once I hit that 5-year mark, they say a very comforting thing, which always makes me laugh. It's like, oh, you'll have a better chance of getting another kind of cancer than getting a repeat cancer of colorectal cancer. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
well,
great. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say it that way,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate, I do appreciate that. So after 5 years, then I go back to I didn't go to my oncologist anymore. Go back to my general, health doctor. And now it's, just kind of doing my yearly checkups and making sure nothing is abnormal, self-assessments, making sure that everything's okay, that kind of thing. But after 5 years, it's kind of like, it's weird. You don't have to go back to the cancer centers anymore. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, and just kind of going off of that, something that a lot of people have told me and friends and family that have experienced cancer in my life is you are undergoing treatment, you feel like you're not in control, but that you're actively doing something to fight back. And then when that treatment ends, as those years go by, you just do a test or a scan once a year, you kind of feel like, well, can I do more?
Yeah.
Is that kind of like the mental struggle that you had of like the constant worry of, is it going to come back? Like, how do you get past those types of thoughts of wondering, what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's, oh man, that is exactly the fight. The mental exercise of not worrying about tomorrow. And I think, I mean, we're all in a way given that mental exercise. We're all given. And I think then, shortly after my cancer journey, we went through COVID. 2017 to 2018, I went through cancer. And then 2020, COVID happened. And, tomorrow is not guaranteed for anybody. And I think that's the key that I learned is that it sounds morbid, but it's actually kind of a reframing of your mental state of like, okay, what is the purpose of worrying about tomorrow? Let's just focus on today. What can I do today? We only have the present moment, and that is legitimately a gift for all of us. And we all have our ailments. We all have our things. Everybody has their cancer story, their baggage, their past. But let's try not to spend a lot of time on what ifs for tomorrow. And I do feel like I've gotten better at that. I definitely feel like I could get better, But it's certainly just like lifting weights. You're going to get muscles that are stronger over time, and it's the same idea, I think.
I want to share two images with you. You kind of mentioned that your cancer was treatable. It was in a good spot according to the
Yeah.
doctors, and then you got a really targeted chemotherapy
Hmm.
specifically for colorectal cancer. It's kind of like a before image and then an after image, but I kind of
Okay.
wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah.
Let me know if you can see my screen right now.
Oh yeah.
So this is similar stage three, a 40-year-old woman, not the most pleasant image to
No.
look at. What kind of goes through your mind when you see a scan like that?
Yeah. I mean, that's it's a similar. I feel like that is a good example of how all colorectal cancers are different. Mine looked very different than that. But yeah, it brings me back to that moment for sure. It's not easy to see that note, like, oh, that's living in my body. And I think that's the weird thing about it. After you get treated and after you get it removed and then you get chemo and you're like, I hope it's not growing back, I hope it's not there again. And then you do a scan a year later and it's like, oh, it's not. Or some people's it is, and then you deal with it again. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And so I mentioned the before and then the after. These are the two images
Wow.
that kind of what I wanted to show you. And not sure how familiar you are with immunotherapy, but just crazy advancements happening every single day in cancer, whether it's colorectal cancer or various types of cancer. But just looking at that time frame of 7 weeks from image on your left to the image to your on your right.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So that was done with immunotherapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Does it give you, you had mentioned when you got the stage three diagnosis that there were all kinds of thoughts going through your head. Obviously you weren't thinking 7 years later you're going to be sitting down talking to me about colorectal cancer awareness, but the treatments and what they had available to you then. Talk a little bit about your thoughts in terms of medical advancements and just kind of what that's allowed you to have in terms of seeing your boys grow up or your kids grow up.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I'm sure, I don't know everything that's happened since then, since 7 years ago. I'm sure it's been amazing, but like before, the last 15, 20 years before I had treatment, I mean, if I would have the same diagnosis 20 years ago, I might not still be here. So I know that it's amazing to see those types of advancements happen over time because treatments that I was given 7 years ago, they've been used for like the last decade, but I think 10 years before they weren't. So I'm super thankful and I'm excited about the future because I keep hearing more advancements, similar to what you just shared, but it's pretty amazing.
You talk about your kids, several times throughout the interview and
Yeah.
how they were much younger back then, but now are growing into their teen years.
Yeah.
What do you think they took away from your journey, your diagnosis, your fight? What do you think your wife took away from that? And what did you personally take away from it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my kids took away a sense of resilience that, you can be handed something tough and you can get through it. And I think we all we all certainly had that sense of resilience with the journey. I kept them, had them involved the whole way through. I elected to be kind of public with my journey as well. So everybody's different. My family and friends on social media, emails I sent out. I think that has been kind of the lesson for me is like, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And sometimes it's not amazing news. And if you get that, then you can fight through it and you just do the best you can.
What are you had mentioned having a relative be able to say, immediately when you said, I'm going through this, well, go get that. A lot of people don't have, a straight direct line of contact with a medical provider of any
Yeah.
sort, especially thinking, trying to go back the day before any of this even started happening when you were 31. What do you say to somebody that may be around that same age of early 30s? Unfortunately, it's becoming more and more common, especially with colorectal
Yeah.
cancer, but it's not something that is like top of mind as soon as something goes wrong. Oh, it's cancer.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think it's dangerous to assume cancer. I think that's a dangerous thing, but I think we also know when things are off in our bodies. I've been doing more running since the last 7 years. I've run a few half marathons, not a lot, but I've kind of tried to run more. And there was one time last year, or actually earlier this year, that I had blood in my stool again, and it kind of like threw me for a loop. And I was supposed to get a colonoscopy like now, like this time of year, but I talked to my doctor and they sped it up and had the colonoscopy happen earlier this year, and it was actually hemorrhoids. But in the moment when I saw it again, I thought, oh my gosh, here we go again. Brought everything back, and I just was like, I don't know if I have the energy to go through this again right now. Just with all the stuff I have going on. But honestly, I think just having I went through it already, and I think not jumping to conclusions right away and going the route, going to your doctor, talking to them, getting the right tests, or doing some research. I think there are a lot of cutting edge technologies. You can now get, mail in colorectal scans, or, you can mail in some tests to get checked early to see if, you have some stage, some signs of cancer in your colon. Like there's things like that they didn't have when I was going through this 7 years ago. I mean, maybe they did, but it wasn't as common. So I think there's lots of things like that. And just, if you're dealing with something weird in your body, do some research, talk to doctors, talk to people. Don't jump to conclusions though, because I think that can be dangerous. Because I really do believe, and I need to get better too, but I really do believe that stress, it's not just something I believe, but if you look at it statistically and everything, stress is just terrible for your body. It causes inflammation. It causes so many things inside. And if you're in a constant state of stress because it's just going to make things worse in your body. It's not going to help your body heal. So trying to live in a place of peace, I learned a lot about my faith and about being in a place of peace, and that's hard, but that's something that I'm working through.
Yeah, and as we kind of start to wrap up, I wanted to follow up on that, because if you talk to somebody that is stressed, well, just calm down. Or you're talking to somebody that's having a bad day, cheer up, it'll get better. Those types of statements, while they might be intended to be, the intention
Helpful.
is good,
Yeah,
but that is the absolute last thing that you want to hear if you were that person going through that. So how do you fight through that, and what has allowed you to kind of get that peace and to get that, perspective of tomorrow's not guaranteed. Let me do things differently now than I would have done 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I have faith in God. It's a big part of my life. It's always been, but it's really kind of come into play a lot more when you go through these darker times. But I do think that there's a perspective shift that you have to work on. It's like I said, it's just like if you have strong arms that you can lift a heavy table or something. I mean, sitting here right now, I'm a result of what I did the last year with my exercise, with my diet, with my thinking. And if you feel like you find yourself in a place where you're constantly going to negative, first of all, get rid of social media and get rid of news, get that out of your brain. And then start putting things that are giving life to you in your brain, good relationships, reading, music, just simple things you start doing and making those little habits that you do instead of jumping on social media. Just sit there and breathe for a second and think for 30 seconds and think about gratitude and think about the people that are around you. And if you don't have people around you that you're thankful for, then find those people or make a different path and forge a new way. But I do think that in our Western society, if I'm talking maybe about Americans as a whole, it's like everybody's all over the spectrum of life and journey and everything, but there's things to be thankful for in every step of the journey. And you can literally always look at the negative, but if you start training your brain, living in a positive place, getting rid of those stress, getting rid of all those things that just take up space, first of all, you're going to live a better life. Second of all, it's healthier for your body, and you're going to have your body in a healthier place. And then you can be better for the people around you. We're all like so focused on ourselves so much, and it's like, why not? We got to focus on each other's and help each other out, because there were so many people during my journey that helped me that were busy and had things going on, but they still decided to help me. And actually, that's one piece of advice that I tell people. I had a lot of people reach out and say, how can I help you? What do you need? And I wasn't at the place, even my wife wasn't at the place, we're not putting together a list of like, hey, you can do this, do this, do this. We just need help. You just have to just help them. Help people that are going through those things, whether that's just give them gift cards for restaurants that are close to them so they can order food out. Like sometimes just bringing them meals is great, but it can be a little bit like people coming into their house and then you got to talk to them and then they don't want to see people, and just send them the best gifts that we had. That weren't family that were able to just kind of see us, were just like gift baskets with like all sorts of things for the kids and gift cards for us to like eat at places at our discretion or whatever. Just do things for them is huge, because you want to help and you text or you call. A lot of texting happening now, so you're sending messages, how can I help, how can I help? Well, just do something.
Well, I really appreciate, your openness. As you mentioned at the beginning, this is not something that you're like gung ho. Let's talk about colorectal cancer and colorectal issues. Was there anything else that you wanted to add? Any advice that you may have for somebody watching this?
I just think that the simple fact of life is that you can only control certain things. Most of what you control is, really the only thing you can control is yourself. And everything comes out of you. Everything comes out of you in terms of your results for your future. And I obviously, for me, I also believe that God is a big part of that for my life. But when things can feel like they're falling apart, and maybe they are, maybe they really are, but they can feel like they are, but you can change your reality and what you're thinking about and how you handle that just by thinking about it differently and training yourself to just work it differently. So I really think that the darkest of days of my life, looking back, I didn't have to live in those dark days like I did. And there were some moments where I just couldn't deal with it. I just lived in a dark space. There's other moments where I could have changed my environment, changed my circumstances, worked harder to just not live in that place. And I think there's going to be people watching this that are going through various stages of cancer, various stages of life. I really just encourage you to not limit yourself by your circumstances and to rise above that. And for me, it's faith, it's family, it's purpose with what I do. And when those things all come together, anything thrown your way, you can find a way around it. You can find a way to get to the other side.
Good advice, and again, I just appreciate your time today and your willingness to kind of share what you've gone through.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It was nice to talk to you as well.